I don't understand why old people need to buy anything. Lydia complained over the phone to her friend. Her friend agreed, and at that moment, through the slightly open door to her room, Lydia saw a shadow flicker in the hallway. Mother heard what I said, thought Lydia, so what? Let her know what I said. Lydia put on a brave face, but suddenly felt a pang of sadness. She heard her mother quietly crying in the kitchen. She heard, but didn't approach her. Why should she? Lydia and her mother, Ms. Ina, lived alone. Ina's husband left her and their tiny daughter for another woman. As he left, he declared that she was too calm, too patient, and overall unremarkable, making life with her as bland as her soup, which was often undersalted and tasteless. He wondered what he had ever seen in her. Her soup was bland, she was bland, and their daughter was neither fish nor fowl, with pale, thin hair, lashes, and delicate little arms and legs. He had always wanted a son, a strong boy, not this, he said, and left. Ina didn't grieve, she had to raise her daughter. Her own mother was sick, not working, and on disability pension, unable to help, so Ina had to rely solely on herself. Her mother-in-law disowned the baby, not even wanting to see her, singing the same song about wanting a grandson instead of Lydia. Ina realized where her husband's grievances came from. Thank goodness, Lydia was old enough to start kindergarten by the time her father left, allowing Ina to work. She didn't return to her mother after the divorce, their relationship had always been strained. Ina had rushed into marriage to escape her parental home. They lived in a rented apartment, moving to a tiny one-room place after the divorce. Ina worked hard and eventually managed to save enough for a room in a dormitory, which made things easier as they no longer had to pay rent. All of Ina's thoughts and dreams were tied to her daughter, whom she loved dearly. Lydia resembled her father little, but looked a lot like Ina, which seemed to be the determining factor. Ina saw herself in Lydia and strove to give her everything, all the things she herself might have lacked. Ina was rarely home, working 2 jobs, but Lydia grew up in comfort and did well in school. Contrary to her father's angry claims when he left, she grew into a quite attractive young woman. Her exam scores were expected to be high. Ina spared no expense for tutors and planned to buy her the most beautiful dress for the graduation party. Ina had taught her that she deserved the best of everything. Even the chocolates that Ina bought for tea, she never touched, though she loved them. Everything was for her daughter. Lydia would offer to share, and Ina would wave it off, saying she didn't want or like them, urging her to eat them herself. Lydia believed her mother truly didn't like chocolates. Red caviar, or berries, because she always refused. But Ina refused for a reason, she was saving money. First, for the room. Then, when Ina's mother passed away, they moved into her apartment after a good renovation, for which Ina had also saved. They then rented out the renovated room. After that, Ina started saving for Lydia's education, tutors, and possibly tuition at a university if her grades weren't enough. As the graduation party approached, Ina went shopping to look for a dress for Lydia and saw an extraordinarily beautiful pantsuit. The saleswoman suggested she try it on, but Ina replied that her daughter needed a dress, not a suit. All the girls would be in fancy dresses. And what about you? The saleswoman asked. You need to dress up too. Ina thought about it. Indeed, she had nothing fancy to wear. What would she wear to the graduation? Everything was planned for Lydia: manicure, festive makeup, hairstyle. She had already arranged and booked everything for her daughter. But for herself? Ina decisively took the hanger with the suit and headed to the fitting room. The suit fit perfectly, as if it were made just for her. It suits you very well, the salesperson said admiringly. Ina could see it herself. She couldn't part with the suit, it was beyond her power. Pleased, she paid for the purchase and returned home. Lydia was in her room preparing for her final exam. She had just returned from her tutor. Ina proudly showed off her purchase and tried on the suit, which greatly surprised her daughter. Lydia raised her beautifully groomed eyebrow and said it was fine, but she didn't understand why her mother bought it. Now there wouldn't be enough money for the dress. I'll withdraw money from my savings for your dress. I'll make up for it next month, her mother replied. Her mood dropped. She thought her daughter would approve of the new outfit and be happy for her. What if I don't get into university and there isn't enough money? Lydia asked, closing her textbook. There will be enough. You don't pay for the entire education at once. I'll save more, Ina said, heading to the kitchen with mixed feelings. She needed to prepare dinner, but her daughter's hurtful reaction and her own words kept playing in her mind. She felt as if she was justifying herself to Lydia. Had she done something wrong? She hadn't bought anything special for herself in many years, only the bare necessities. But this suit, she liked it so much. Ina, lost in sad thoughts, walked to the corridor to get a bag of sugar from the pantry. Passing by her daughter's room, she overheard Lydia on the phone with her friend, saying that old people didn't need anything and that her mother shouldn't have bought the suit, she should have bought something for Lydia instead. And that old people should be thinking about their souls, not outfits. How old I must seem. I'm only 38, Ina thought. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she cried inconsolably. She suddenly realized that all these years she had lived like a robot, ignoring herself, her needs, and interests. She had learned to ignore them so well that she stopped noticing. She smiled when she wanted to cry. She worked when she was terribly sick, had no strength, and just wanted to lie down and stare at the ceiling. She always thought about what needed to be done. And meanwhile, her daughter had grown up selfish. Lydia sat in the hospital corridor, waiting for the operation to end. The doctor said it was very serious and her mother might not survive. Lydia prayed. She had been praying for 5 hours, recalling moments from her childhood, both good and bad, although there were hardly any bad ones. There were things Lydia now felt ashamed of. She kept remembering the graduation dress episode. Tears streamed down her face. Now, as a 35-year-old woman, married with a daughter, she understood the foolish things she had said back then and how much she had hurt her mother. She couldn't imagine her daughter saying something like that to her now. 10 years ago, Lydia married a good man and had a child. Her mother helped them buy a separate apartment and continued to help afterward. Lydia was very grateful and repaid her kindness in kind. She occasionally brought her daughter Anna to visit her grandmother, but tried not to ask for help often, so as not to tire her. Once, they gave Ms. Anna a trip to a health resort, and when her mother broke her leg, they fully covered the rehabilitation costs. Lydia chose a good rehabilitation center and arranged for her mother to go there. Recently, Ms. Anna had a flare-up of a chronic illness. Her condition worsened by the hour, and the pain was unbearable. She first called an ambulance and then her daughter. It was a day off, and Lydia managed to rush to her mother by taxi. Ms. Anna was urgently taken to the hospital and underwent surgery. The doctor told Lydia that her mother might not survive. Lydia continued to sit on the uncomfortable plastic chair in the hospital corridor. Her back was so numb that changing positions didn't help anymore. Nurses bustled back and forth in the corridor. A cleaner mopped the floors. Her husband called a couple of times, asking if there was any news about her mother. Lydia replied that the operation was still ongoing. She closed her eyes. Her thoughts returned to that distant episode. After that incident with the suit, Ina changed. She became stricter. Instead of the promised phone for her birthday, which came right after graduation, Lydia received a chocolate bar. Just a regular chocolate bar. Her mother said that all the money had gone to the dress and preparations for graduation. Then, there was also the trip the graduates took after the celebration, which required a substantial amount of money as well. Ina calculated everything, wrote it down on a piece of paper, and showed it to her daughter. Lydia, not understanding, looked at her mother. She didn't recognize her parent. It was the first time her mother showed her such calculations. However, she had to accept it. Ina now split all sweets and treats equally with her daughter. Lydia gradually got used to the fact that her mother also liked chocolates and sometimes wanted to eat something special. Or get a new hairstyle. Or have some fun, like going to the movies. They started going to the movies together. In the park, Ina rode the rides for the first time in many years. Gradually, they became like two friends, and the distance between them, which they had always felt, diminished. Ina stopped hiding her feelings and allowed herself to be how she wanted to be, tired, sad, upset. Not like before, with a permanent smile and asking what else her daughter wished for. And yes, Lydia got into a university on a scholarship, which they happily learned at the end of the summer. The money wasn't needed. It will go towards your dowry, her mother said. Thank you, Lydia smiled and hugged Ina. Mom, my dear mom. Lydia squeezed her mother's cold fingers, but she still hadn't fully regained consciousness and didn't respond. The doctor allowed her to visit, saying it would be better if her mother woke up next to a loved one. So Lydia started talking about how much she loved her, how she couldn't imagine living without her. And she also began to ask for forgiveness. What do you need forgiveness for, my dear? Her mother suddenly asked, lifting her head from the pillow. She had finally fully regained consciousness after the surgery. Lie down, Mom, you're very weak, Lydia said, not trying to hide her tears. The doctor said you might not survive, and I thought I had to ask for your forgiveness. Because I never did it back then. Oh, Lydia, I'll live a long time yet, see my great-grandchildren, and have time to annoy you all. Ina joked weakly and smiled. So, you forgive me? Of course, my dear. I forgave you a long time ago, Ina said, smiling again. Lydia smiled too and squeezed her mother's hand. She realized the crisis had passed, and now her mother would definitely get better. Get better. Get better.